You know the basics of combat. You know that you can deal extra damage by walking your enemies with bleeds, and you probably know a basic combat rotation. But what are some good upgrades you can get to boost your DPM more? Well, that's what this video is for, so whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So the first upgrade is of course Greater Ricochet, so that you can just brrrr everything in the game. Okay, I'm kidding. The first upgrade, or first thing you should be looking at, are Archaeology relics, as they give you a passive damage boost. The setup you want to be aiming for is a Archaeology relic setup that requires Font of Life, requiring level 5 Archaeology, Berserker's Fury, requiring level 56, and Fury of the Small at level 97 Archaeology, which is a fairly steep level requirement. I'm fully aware. There are a variety of different relics you can use, and you can definitely swap them out. Let's say if you want more quality of life, instead of Fury of the Small, you can swap it out for Persistent Rage if you hate stalling your adrenaline outside of combat, and to be honest, I'm one of those people. But a general best in slot setup for someone with 500 monolith energy is that triple relic setup. With 650 monolith energy, the best in slot setup changes a bit. You will have Fury of the Small, Berserker's Fury, and Death Ward. Those last two ones work really well in combination with each other, and if you're using something like Hardix Bolts and the Eldritch Crossbow spec, you might want to swap out Berserker's Fury for Highlighted Senses, which increases your maximum adrenaline by 10%. In case you're looking for more options, I'll leave a wiki link in the description below that will show you a bunch of different relic builds. Next up, we have the Planted Feet switch, but before you should even think about getting the Planted Feet switch, you need to go ahead and do the World Wakes quest. I have a guide for it. It doesn't require anything, just some good combat gear and combat stats, and you will get a bunch of new abilities, including Sunshine, Death Swiftness, and Natural Instinct, which are the three main important ones you want to get. Death Swiftness and Sunshine boost your damage by 50% when standing in the 7x7 area created by the ultimate ability for 30 seconds. Now, these abilities deal a little bit of damage against enemies that are inside the 7x7 area, but the Planted Feet switch removes that, and then in turn increases the duration by another 7.8 seconds, which is incredible for boss encounters, and even for Slayer, by the way. That's a big damage increase overall for your DPM. Now, a little while back, I did a test with my buddy Plebshot on how much the Planted Feet switch would increase your DPM compared to just using Death Swiftness and Sunshine normally without that switch. The increase in damage was about 8 to 15% in between our rotations, and that's obviously dependent on consistency and isn't 100% mathematically correct, but it should give you an idea of why a Planted Feet switch is important. Next up, we have the Salve amulet enchanted. Now, this thing increases your damage and accuracy against all undead creatures by 20%. The regular amulet only boosts it by 15%, but 20%, guys, that is humongous. Now, I did say all, but in reality, some things don't work. I believe Barrows and Grigorovic are two examples of where it doesn't work, but it does work excellently in Bossy McBossface, Edimu, Aberrant Spectres, Revenants, Spiritual Mages, Rangers and Warriors, and of course, Taraket, where you would want to be using this thing. Absolutely. It is best in slot for Elite Dungeon 3's second boss. To get the Salve Amulet E, you will need to complete the Lair of Tarn Razalor mini quest, which is a little annoying to do. Once you have it done, you have it done. The regular Salve Amulet is obtained from the Haunted Mine quest. The next thing in this video is something you should be using whenever you are bossing. It doesn't matter when, it's just so good and it boosts your kills per hour by a lot. It's the Adrenaline Potion, requiring level 84 Herbal to create. Now, this potion can be combined into a different type of potion, like for example the Replenishment Potion, which is a Super Restore and an Adrenaline Potion in one. But let's just have a look at the Adrenaline Potion itself. This potion gives you 25% adrenaline, and it has a 2-minute cooldown once sipped. This potion allows you to get off way more thresholds inside a Death Swiftness, Sunshine, or Berserk, and for Berserk, especially because its duration is so short, it's incredibly good. If you have the Adrenaline Potion and you have a Planted Feet switch and Sunshine and Death Swiftness, you can go ahead and use my DPS for Beginners video to get your basic rotation going in case you're watching this and you don't have a basic understanding of how a DPS rotation works. With that video, you are going to get much faster bossing kills, I guarantee it, if you aren't using a proper rotation yet. If you want a short rundown of what that video is about, it comes down to using the right basics in order, with the best damage ones first, and every time you have enough adrenaline for your ultimate ability, using your ultimate ability, then sipping your Adrenaline Potion and popping off a bunch of thresholds. That will already in itself make you a lot better at PVM just by following that simple rotation. Next up, we have Limitless, probably one of the more expensive things in this video, because it costs 2,000 vital sparks to create. That's about 370 mil. But it does give you an adrenaline potion you can use on top of your adrenaline potion every 90 seconds. Limitless is so good because 1, it can allow you to get off more thresholds inside Death Swiftness or Berserk on top of your adrenaline potion, which in Berserk's case is really important as Berserk is super short. Or alternatively, it can replace your replenishment potion or adrenaline potion inside a rotation the second time around you use Berserk when it comes on cooldown, or Death Swiftness, or Sunshine, because your adrenaline potion, the next time you do use Sunshine, if you use it in your previous rotation, will be on cooldown because it lasts 2 minutes. The cooldown of Limitless is only 1.5 minutes. For those wondering exactly how the ability works, it allows you to use thresholds at 15% instead of 50% adrenaline for 6 seconds, but you cannot activate the ability above 60% adrenaline. Apart from being used offensively, it can also be used as a panic threshold button for your defensive thresholds at, for example, the Ambassador. There's a couple of other scenarios where it could work as well, and perhaps for Gold Rush Dungeon 3 too. So it doesn't just have offensive uses, but also defensive uses if you quickly need to grab a defensive threshold to stay alive. All in all, great all-round ability for all combat styles, and definitely something you should be getting. Perks are another good way of boosting your damage without any input in terms of actions per minute or effort, as they are passive once you add them to your weapons. Perks can be added with the Invention skill, and if you have level 85 Invention, you can unlock Ancient Invention by buying the blueprint on the Grand Exchange, and then getting Ancient Gizmo Shells. Getting the Precise 6 Equilibrium 4 perk setup will increase your damage by around 7.1% over not having any perks whatsoever. That's a massive difference, and that's just for the weapons. Something like Biting 2 on your armor, which is a very basic perk and you don't even need Ancient Invention and you don't need expensive components, can already increase your damage by like 4% on average, which is great. I'm getting these numbers from the PVME Discord, by the way. PVME is a good source of information regarding PVM things, and I'll leave a link to that Discord and my own in the description below. Overall, perks are one of the best ways to get more damage output, more adrenaline gain, and a couple of other things. Basically, increase your overall combat capabilities without too much input cost in terms of GP compared to other things, and you really shouldn't be buying stuff like tank armor. It's a waste of your money. You should always be focusing on your damage output, because the more damage you deal on RuneScape, the less hits you'll be taking from that boss, which means you're going to be using less food, you're going to be healing more from Soul Split, and I think you get the point. RuneScape is almost Glass Cannonscape. The more damage you do, the better and the easier bossing will be. If you're wondering about the difference between DPS armor and tank armor at, let's say, tier 70 when comparing Verax to Bandos, Bandos gives you anywhere from 8.3 to 8.5% more damage than the Verax armor when using abilities, or even in Legacy, it doesn't matter. That is substantial. Now, if we go back to Invention, Invention also has Slayer perks, which are the Demon, Dragon, and Undead Slayer perks, and these increase your damage against these creatures by 7%. Now, these perks, when combined with a certain other perk you put on your armor, are actually really important. For example, the Undead Slayer perk is great for Barrow's Rise of the Six, or for Taraket and Elite Dungeon 3, and the Dragon Slayer perk is of course great for Elite Dungeon 2. So, Invention is very good. The final thing I'd like to cover is the Ripper Demon familiar, which is basically the best familiar in the game in almost all scenarios. The Ripper Demon's average DPM is probably about 50% higher than the Steel Titan in just average DPM, no scrolls, nothing. With scrolls, it's probably twice as good as a Steel Titan. I've seen varied numbers on this. I've tested it myself when Ancient Summoning came out, but since then it has been nerfed. But regardless, the Ripper Demon is still by far the best familiar in the game, and even if you aren't using scrolls, and even if the Ripper can't hit the boss physically because it's a melee only familiar, you still have the passive, which increases your damage against the opponent up to a maximum of 5% when the opponent is basically dead. The lower the HP, the more damage you'll be dealing, and that's a straight up damage buff by just having a familiar active. And if you don't need a pack yak for extra food, this is just such a good familiar. And this is why I wanted to mention it separately. And with that being said, we have come to the end of this video. There are of course plenty other ways to increase your damage, like just getting greater ricochet, or using Bakriminel bolts, or using vulnerability, gold books, auras, and all that kind of stuff. But these are the main things I wanted to cover, as some of these things are kind of under the radar and sometimes aren't brought up as often as Bakriminel bolts or auras. And with that being said, we have come to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below and maybe even consider subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.